So tell us where you are at the moment, Sarah, and what's happening to you.
Yeah, so at the current moment, I'm in my house in Highland Park, which is in Northeast LA, and we lost power last night, so I'm kind of sitting crouched in the dark with a blanket. But thankfully, my house is not under an evacuation order, so I do feel grateful for that. But I'm about 15 minutes from the fire that's based over in the Pasadena area, which was kind of the second big fire that blew up yesterday.
And tell us, give us context for this, because you live in a part of the world where there are wildfires regularly. The state of California has them all of the time. How unusual does this feel? This last couple of days feel?
It's truly apocalyptic and pretty unusual, but sadly becoming more normal here in California. So my entire life, I'm from California, and my entire life there have been wildfires. There's always a wildfire season. Typically, they would be in more remote areas. Sometimes they would start to encroach on cities, but this is really the first one that has come this far into Los Angeles. It's really hitting, getting close to populated areas. A new fire just broke out in the last 2 hours in the Hollywood Hills, which is a very iconic place near the Hollywood sign, very heavily populated. People are fleeing that area. So it really is at a degree that we have not seen here in Los Angeles and have seen really rarely in California.
And Californians don't have winter really, which is one of the nice things about California. But this is winter. I mean, this is not. It's not a heat wave. It's not a time of sort of scorching heat. Do we know why this has happened now?
Yeah, it's very clear why it's happened now, which is something we have called the Santa Ana winds, which is a very particular thing to California. And they're basically these winds that come in from the desert, and they, typically if it was been some rain, it would be okay to have these kind of winds. But the winds were so powerful yesterday. I think at times they could hit 100 miles per hour. You'd walk outside and everything was just swirling around you. And so if you have one ember in that, in dry conditions and the drought that we've been in lately, it just has the power to be devastating.
I mean, it's a very striking thing that there's been all sorts of developments in technology over the years, and mankind has conquered all sorts of things. It does feel. I don't know if you feel this particularly keenly, slightly impotent when this happens, when you have high winds and there are embers and the embers are flying over the place. How much can be done about it? Do you feel that the city can get on top of this very easily?
Yeah, it's definitely a troubling aspect of this because the fire crews were ready. The National Weather Service had been warning about this wind event for at least a week. And so I spoke with fire officials today who said they were ready. They had people deployed from all across California, even out of state. Firefighters came from everywhere, basically anticipating something to happen. And even with that, there's just these fires get so large that there's just nothing they can do to contain it. They have to kind of let it burn until they can get a handle on it. And so even fire technology is only so advanced. There's only so much water and fire retardant that humans can deploy. And so even with all the technology in the world, fires are just a natural thing that are really horrible to try to stop.
And what are people doing in their lives, Sarah? Even if they're not, I mean, presumably the people who obviously need to be evacuated are being evacuated, but there must be this pall of smoke across the sky. Are people going about their normal business in the rest of the city, or people just sitting staring at the smoke and worrying? What does it feel like?
Yeah, it's a really strange mix. And so, again, I said I'm out of power in my house, but about half a mile down the road there is power. And so for people in those houses, it's probably an evening pretty much as usual tonight. Outside the air is very smoky in most of the city at this point because there are so many fires. Almost everyone has smoke impacting them. But I'm sure some people were working today, probably doing more work from home than usual. Some stores were open, gas stations were open, restaurants were open. Then you go a few miles away and everything's deserted and it looks like the apocalypse. So it's a very patchwork
Yeah.
situation right now, depending on where you are.
I wonder whether someone would be criticised for going to a restaurant, while the air around the city burns. But it's hard to know what the right thing to do is.
Exactly. And for those businesses, it's
Yeah.
still money for them and they need the business as well and people need to eat. And so, yeah, I'm sure there's not a lot of celebration going on today, I would guess, but I think some day-to-day activity is still carrying on in parts of the city.
And is there any cause for optimism? What's the prognosis now? Is there a chance? Because you're saying a new fire started 2 hours ago. When will this end?
Yeah, that really, I thought we could hopefully try to start getting a handle on things tomorrow, but this new fire is really troublesome, and I hope doesn't lead to any fatalities. We've had 5 fatalities in the Pasadena fire, which is the one closest to me in Northeast LA. The winds are starting to die down, and so once they die down, fire crews can get in the air again and go by helicopter and drop water and fire retardant. And so that will help. But it's just going to kind of have to run its course, and it's not going to be quick or easy.
And just finally, how much of it do people focus on the celebrity aspect of this in America? Because, it's the home of Hollywood. I've seen, Billy Crystal has lost a home. Paris Hilton has. It looks like LeBron James, the basketball player, has. Does that become a slightly sort of prurient part of the story that it's affecting very, very famous, very, very rich people?
Yes, it definitely does. And the last few cycles of Los Angeles fires in particular have hit these areas that are very wealthy, like Malibu. This one's in the Pacific Palisades. These are places that people move to because they have huge mansions kind of tucked in the hills overlooking the beach, but that becomes very vulnerable in these fire conditions. So there definitely is a lot of Hollywood glitz being thrown out today, talking about landmarks that have burned down and the like. And so I think that's part and parcel with LA. Hopefully it doesn't take away from the devastation it's caused to everyday people as well, but this one really has impacted a bit of the high-flying slice of Los Angeles.
Well, listen, Sarah, take care of yourself. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us, and I hope things get better soon.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I know the world is looking at images of our city's devastation. I have seen the front lines of the Palisades fire, and it is staggering. I spoke with President Biden today and Governor Newsom earlier today, and they assured me of full federal and state support. As we head into tonight, we are still facing strong and erratic winds. In Palisades and in Sylmar, we are very much in an active firefight. I can report to you that the Woodley fire, however, in the Sepulveda Basin is under control. I can also report that finally air operations have resumed, and that is a big deal, but it is up to the winds as to how long the air support can continue.
The Palisades fire continues to demand significant local, regional, state, and federal resources. Currently, the fire is over 15,800 acres and is growing, with 1,792 personnel who are currently assigned. And as we know, I want to be very, very clear that this incident is very, very dynamic as we speak.